How far can a Formula One rivalry go before it turns into a war? Can a car without brakes become a weapon of global scandal? What Hamilton and Ferrari just did after Singapore could change everything, especially for Fernando Alonso. What happened in the final laps of the 2025 Singapore Grand Prix was much more than a simple episode of tension on the track. It was the rebirth of a rivalry buried by time, but never forgotten. The scene was so intense that a single radio broadcast was enough to turn a close race into a media earthquake that shook the foundations of the paddock. Imagine the scenario: the Marina Bay circuit, artificially lit, high temperatures and oppressive humidity. Asphalt, treacherous by nature, does not forgive mistakes or wear and tear. There were just 2 laps to go. Fernando Alonso, a hungry veteran, still with competitive fire burning in every maneuver, was chasing Lewis Hamilton, now dressed in Ferrari red, who was fighting with an injured car, a machine that at that point had stopped responding as it should. What no one knew at the time, at least outside the Ferrari wall, is that Hamilton was driving a car without functional brakes. It is not a rhetorical exaggeration. Literally, the left front brake system had collapsed. What kept Hamilton within the circuit was not Maranello's engineering, it was the experience accumulated over almost 2 decades, the management of the lift and coast, and a concentration bordering on the superhuman. Alonso, not having that information in real time, only saw a slow Ferrari that blocked his overtaking attempts. Frustration built up, and when his engineer told him that the Briton was having problems, his reaction was visceral, raw, spontaneous. His radio message became a manifesto of indignation. Not a complaint about not being able to overtake, but an accusation that the FIA and Ferrari were allowing dangerous conditions on the track. The words he spoke were etched in the memory of every fan who witnessed that moment. "Is it safe to drive without brakes?" Followed by multiple repetitions of "I cannot fucking believe it." It was a moment of maximum emotional honesty, without filters, without political calculation. And this is where the conflict transcends sports. Alonso was not speaking only as a frustrated pilot. He spoke as someone who, for years, has felt that the regulations are not applied with the same severity for everyone. He recalled penalties from the past, remembered how he had been penalized for broken mirrors, and now he saw how a car without brakes continued on the track without consequences. What for him was injustice, for many was the straw that broke the camel's back. That radio communication not only set social networks on fire, it also served as a catalyst for something deeper, the reactivation of an old wound. Because although the rivalry between Alonso and Hamilton began in 2007 at McLaren, it never completely disappeared. It was in Singapore where the tension accumulated for almost 2 decades found its perfect setting to reappear with brutal force. The cameras captured Alonso getting out of the car, still visibly upset. The post-race statements, although more measured, maintained that challenging subtext. "I knew I had touched a sensitive nerve." He knew that Ferrari and Hamilton were not going to let what was said pass without responding. What he didn't know perhaps was how deeply Hamilton had taken it, or what would come next. The reality is that Singapore became the turning point. A simple mechanical failure, transformed by the narrative of 2 titans of motorsports, became a symbol of something bigger. A rivalry of legends that, far from fading over the years, seems to have been rekindled like never before. Because when 2 world champions with 7 titles each face each other, the conflict is not only on the court. It's personal. It's historic. And now, more than ever, it is public. From the outside, watching a driver defend position in the final laps may seem like part of the show. But when the figures come to light, the perception changes completely. According to Ferrari telemetry records, from lap 60 on a circuit that has 62 laps, car number 44 was running without effective pressure on the left front brake. This was not a one-time failure, it was a systematic collapse. And even more serious, already in the initial laps, exactly from the 2nd or 3rd, the data showed thermal irregularities throughout the braking system. Hamilton didn't just manage a failure, he managed a potential tragedy for almost the entire race. Technicians in Maranello later detected that the SF25 suffers from a chronic thermal imbalance between the rear brakes, especially between the right and left sides. This type of failure not only affects braking performance, but also seriously compromises the stability of the car when entering corners, as it generates unpredictable mass transfers. This, on an urban layout like Marina Bay with tight curves and constant intense braking, is a high-risk cocktail. Hamilton's message on lap 60, not broadcast in the official coverage, said it all. "I'm losing my brakes, mate. I've lost my left front." The tone was calm, but the gravity was monumental. What the world saw as sparks under the car was not an aesthetic detail. They were visual signs of direct contact between metal components that were not designed to withstand friction without cooling. It was a Ferrari literally disintegrating at 300 kilometers per hour. And here comes the most controversial factor. Ferrari did not call the pits. Despite knowing that the front braking system was inoperative, they decided to keep Hamilton on the track. Because even with a broken car, he could defend a handful of points. And that, in a constructors' championship where every point is gold, seemed to justify the risk. But the damage was already done. In the paddock, everyone knew that Singapore had been more than just a technical controversy. It was a master move in the emotional and media chess of Formula One. And in that game, Hamilton had checked. The storm that hit Ferrari after the Singapore Grand Prix was not just external. It was not only the media, fans, or rival drivers who began to question the most emblematic team in Formula One. It was also an internal storm. A subtle but powerful creak in the very fabric of Maranello. Because what happened in Marina Bay was not a one-time mistake. It was a revelation of vulnerability, depression, of decisions made on the edge of the regulations. And that, at Ferrari, hurts more than anywhere else. The decision to keep Lewis Hamilton on the track with a car that was literally disintegrating its braking system was not improvised. It was a calculated move. And that is precisely what has set off the alarms. Because when a team with Ferrari's legacy chooses extreme risk over safety, what is at stake is not just race position. It is your identity, its ethics, its prestige. Within the team, tensions began to accumulate since free practice. Telemetry data already showed that the SF25 had a chronic thermal imbalance in the rear axle. The temperatures in the brakes were not distributed evenly, something that could lead, as it did, to uncontrolled overheating. Despite the warnings, the technical department's decision was not to intervene aggressively. Because increasing ventilation would have compromised the aerodynamic balance of the car, reducing its top speed and affecting its straight-line performance. What seemed like a pragmatic technical decision turned into a chain of unforeseen consequences. A bad design choice that turned into a bad racing strategy. And worse, a possible sign of misaligned priorities within the organization. Since the arrival of Frédéric Vasseur to the management of the team, Ferrari had tried to build a renewed image, colder, more logical, less emotional. The focus was clear: reduce errors, make decisions based on data, not impulses. And for a while it seemed to work. But Singapore exposed a rift. Because at that critical moment, Ferrari did not react like a rational team. They reacted like a team desperate to show that they can win, that they are not going to give up a single point, even if that means stretching the limits of what is acceptable. The strategy department was one of the first to receive criticism. Why wasn't the car immediately removed? Why were the technical stewards not consulted about a possible real-time evaluation of the integrity of the car? Some internal voices suggest that communication between track engineers and the strategy wall was ambiguous, that there were disagreements, that the urgency to stay in the points blinded the perspective of risk. And that raises an even more uncomfortable question. How many times has outcome been prioritized over safety in other similar circumstances? This episode leaves us with more questions than answers. Was Ferrari's decision correct in keeping a car with a critical failure on the track? Is it acceptable for a driver to continue racing without functional brakes if he or she is still in control? Is Fernando Alonso right in denouncing an alleged double standard in the application of the rules? Or was his reaction simply the result of frustration? But now it's your turn. Because this debate no longer belongs only to the drivers, nor to the teams, nor to the experts. It belongs to all of us, those of us who live F1 with our hearts racing and our analysis on. What do you think of all this? Are you on the side of Hamilton, who decided to continue competing despite the conditions, challenging the physical and technical limits of his car? Or are you on the side of Alonso, who raised his voice in the name of safety, demanding consistency and fairness in the application of the regulation? Leave it in the comments.